Welcome one and all, it's time for yet another red hot, spicy, tingling, sizzling, finger-licking good tournament report. Kings of War, Abyssal Dwarfs, back on the menu, with a twist. So, this is the Birmingham Bullrun 4, and you may recall that the first two Birmingham Bullruns I actually scooped up the best overall prize, which was a crown on both occasions. So I've got 2 crowns from this event. The last one, I didn't do quite as well, but Abyssal Dwarfs, what is the twist, you ask? Well, the twist is right in front of you. There is no golems, there is no defense 6 whatsoever, there are no spellcasters, there is no shooting of any description. So, what does this army do? I've told you what it doesn't do. Well, it has lots of speed. So at Clash of Kings in particular, one of the things that stuck with me was the fact that the only game where I felt like I at no point really had a chance unless my opponent did something very silly was a game against a very fast army. Lots of hard-hitting speed 10 stuff. On this occasion, it was Basileans, but there are a few armies that can do really good, hard-hitting, fast lists. Not always speed 10 necessarily, some of them can do it at speed 9 or 8 with cavalry is quite a common one for some hard-hitting units. So, I decided my Abyssal Dwarf army can't really do that because I don't have enough speed. So what can I add? And as little as possible, what can I add to my collection to make it viable to run a speed list? So what we ended up with another unit of half-breeds and another unit of grotesques. So with that, there is now only one slow unit in this entire list, if you don't include the special tournament character there, which I'll tell you about in a minute. So, the thinking is, we've got 2 hard-hitting cavalry units, speed 8, 2 hard-hitting large cavalry units, speed 7, so they're not super fast, but it's enough. Then we've got the 2 gargoyles, speed 10, mostly chaff, of course, which are going to facilitate some of the other units getting into combat on the occasions I come up against an even faster list than mine. We've got speed 10 Susan. We've got Brachybarker, speed 8, and a half-breed champion, speed 8. Grotesque champion, speed 7. So everything, apart from the Immortal Guard, is designed around speed. Speed 7 and 8, in some matchups they are going to be outranged by the enemy. There are going to be some armies that bring a lot of speed 9 and 10, which is going to be faster than much of my stuff. But we've got the Gargoyles and Susan to hopefully mitigate that. And convenient thing about cavalry, regular cavalry, is that the Gargoyles can sit perfectly in front of them and obscure their entire frontage. So there's potential for them to be shepherded into combat that way. And yeah, so that is the thinking behind the list. There is no Titan in sight either. I don't feel like the big flyer for the Abyssal Dwarfs is actually that worthy of its points. At 300 points, you can take Susan for 210 and a unit of Gargoyles for the same points, and I think her being individual does a good job. Issues with this list. We've got 8 scoring units, 3 non-scoring, and the special hero character for the tournament as well. So only 8 scoring units, that's not a huge amount. Most of them don't want to be holding tokens, so if I'm forced to hold anything, it's probably the Immortal Guard that would like to do that because they're already very slow. Everyone else is going to be slowed down if they start carrying tokens. The only units that could feasibly go and hold an area and not deny me of a lot of hitting power. We've got the Gargoyles who could do that, the Immortal Guard. They're quite expensive for that job, but they're not prone to attack by enemy chaff. So they can be useful in that role because they are actually pretty good. They're just very slow. So we've got some speed, and what artifacts have I loaded them up with? Well, the half-breeds, I've given one of them the Helm of the Drunken Ram, so they can have some extra Thunderous Charge. So they're now Crush 1, Thunderous 2, which is the same as the Grotesques. And I've made the other one Elite. So, should make them more reliable with their killing. The two grotesque hordes, one of them has got the boots of striding because we don't want them to be hitting on 5s very often, that's not optimal. And the other one has got the staying stone just because that's all I had points left over for. Then we have got, on the Abyssal Half-Breed Champion, the Scythe of the Harvester for some extra attacks against puny infantry and such things. Anything small is going to get extra attacks against them, because they are slightly limited in their number of attacks, 6, which is the same for Bracky. He's crushed 3. Suzu, or Susan, has 7 attacks, but he's not vicious, weirdly enough. We've also got the Inspiring Talisman on the Grotesque Champion, because it's not inherently inspiring, which makes it not a very good choice, I think. But, to fit the theme, lots of speed, we've put him in there, and 4 sources of inspiring, so I should be mostly inspired for this game. Even though all 4 of these heroes potentially want to leave the main battle line at some point, hopefully the rest of the troops will keep up with them. That's the plan. So the special Bullrun character is a bull that becomes more powerful over the course of the game, and I've used a Bad Squiddo Games Tiefling to represent mine because it has horns. So the bull, in the first turn it's very slow, it's only speed 2. Its speed goes up by 1 in each turn. Its number of attacks goes up by 1 in each turn, starting I think with 2 as well. Its defense actually goes down each turn. So, it also gains other rules later on. After, I think, round 4 or 5, it gains Dread, and it's a Dread that stacks with other Dread. So, Bracky has Dread, so that would stack with it, and all the Grotesques have Brutal, so that would stack with it as well. So, potentially very tasty there. What am I missing that I would normally have in my Abyssal Dwarf army? Mostly defense. There is no defense 6 to be found here at all, but defense 5 on most things, defense 4 on the 2 half-breed regiments, and defense 3 on the gargoyles. So, there is a picture of the list, a reference, and you can see quite a bit of speed. And this is my opponent in round 1. So before I describe this list, I'll tell you a little bit about the scoring for this tournament. So you get, I believe, 3 points for a win and 1 for a draw, I think. And then beyond that, you can get up to 7 for the number of victory points you score in the game. So there are always going to be 7 points on offer to you on the table. And if you score all of them, then you'll get another 7 points. So margin of victory is a very big deal at this event. Just winning isn't enough. And then killing can get you another 4 for each. I think it's at 20% intervals for the enemy army. That's going to get you a point. So if you kill less than 20%, you don't get anything. If you kill almost everything, you get another 4 points. So half of the available points are for the victory points on the table. And if you're scooping up lots of those, you're going to be winning as well, which is going to get you another 3, and then killing stuff for another 4. So I think 14 is the maximum in each round. This list isn't perhaps the best at scoring points in those situations. If you have, for example, control as a mission, then as soon as I lose 3 units, suddenly I can't control every zone. So, potentially could struggle there, but I'm hoping to do a lot of killing. In the first round, I'm up against the Rift-Forged Orcs. Now, this is quite a fast list as well, and obviously the kind of list that my list is designed to give me a fighting chance against. So what do we have? We've got some Speed 7 Riftwalker Heavy Infantry. These are actually flyers, so nimble flyers, but only Speed 7. Then we've got some Thunder Seekers with Brew of Sharpness, and so they're going to be hitting on 3s. They've got Crush 1, but it's the 30 attacks that's scary about these guys. So other than the number of attacks, they look kind of like an ogre type unit, but then you see that they actually have a cost of 270 points when you put that upgrade on them. So 225 points as standard. The one thing that lets them down really is the crushing strength not being very high. Their nerve is about what you'd expect for kind of an ogre type unit, but it's the 30 attacks that's the big deal there. Hell Strikers, so large cavalry horde with Wine of Elvenkind, so they are nimble and speed 10, so they're quite scary, hitting on 3s with brutal and crushing strength and thunderous charge, so scary unit there. Fight wagons, so another unit with 30 attacks and speed 7, so they're still pretty quick. Pushing strength 1. It's just lots and lots of attacks, and they've got boots of striding. There is a storm giant, which is the only bit of shooting in this list, I think. Oh no, there's 2 bits. So this is the wind blast 6 on the storm giant, and yeah, this giant's pretty beastly because he has got d6 plus 8 attacks plus Slayer d6. So a lot of my units will suffer from the effects of Slayer. By a lot, I mean the grotesques, by the way. Cloak of Death as well is a nice rule to have. The issue with this giant compared to others, it can be wavered, and I think that's the main downside to this one. 2 Stormbringers on Health Strike Manticores, so 2 flying large cavalry heroes at speed 10 with 5 attacks each. So 160 points, pretty solid, so got to watch out for those. And a Stormbringer on Winged Slasher, which is just a more scary version of those really, twice as many attacks and higher nerve mostly, the difference is there. So let's dive in. Oh, there's only 9 units in this, so if I thought I had a low unit count, my opponent has even lower. Game 1. So all the scenarios are weird for this event. Game 1, stockpile. So it's essentially loot with the items placed in the same way. However, the loot tokens don't just contain 1 token, they contain a stack of tokens which can be picked up one at a time. So the one in the middle has 3 tokens on it, and the other piles have 2 tokens on them. So you've got a total of 7 loot counters in 3 piles there. So, interesting table layout here. So we've got 2 massive pieces of impassable terrain there, which are kind of dividing the board almost into 3. So, you can see we've all gone for 3 distinct forces here. Normally, under normal tournament scoring circumstances where you get rewarded heavily for the win, and the margin of victory isn't that big of a deal in terms of scoring, then I would always recommend holding on to just 2 areas of the table. So coming from this side, I would put all my forces and try and just take these objectives here and totally ignore that flank, completely leave it unattended, and yeah, that would be my plan. In this situation that you see here, because the scoring, my arrow just jumps around a bit there, because of the scoring, the fact that you can get so many extra points for every victory point on the table, maybe you don't want to actually leave any of them unattended. So I'm kind of putting a small force over to this side, but because my opponent has put so much stuff there during deployment, mid-deployment I then decided, you know what, I don't really care about that token, so I'm just going to put Susan here, gargoyles, so they can go away if they need to, and the Immortal Guard can just try and hold up the enemy for as long as possible, so that I can concentrate on the middle one with the force I've got here, which contains all my grotesques, the grotesque champion, and the half-breed champion, and Susan can go off that way as well. So, because of the deployment, not too bothered about this side anymore. Over on this side over here, I've got all my half-breed regiments with some gargoyles and Brachybarca, which is more than a match for what my opponent has over there, which is 1 unit of Manticore cavalry, 1 hero, and then 1 of the flying infantry unit. So just those 3. I don't think they're going to be much of a threat to my flank. They do have more speed than me, with 2 flying units, but gargoyles can easily hide one of my half-breed regiments. In the middle, the giant, the Thunder Seekers, this is actually quite a dangerous area. So against my grotesques, what I'm going to try to do is make sure that anyone charging me is going to be going over walls, for instance. Hopefully. That's the plan. The giant wouldn't care about that. And there's the flyer in there as well. This one, this is just a horrifying area with the fight wagons and the big slasher, so I'm just going to try and hold this up and focus more on this one and taking this one. Now, one small issue is that I've got 2 very hard-hitting units over here. I think I'm going to completely sweep this flank, but from that position, this piece of terrain is so huge, there's not a lot of extra places they can go afterwards, after the fight. So they're really going to be dedicated to taking these 2 tokens, and they're going to be relying on these units and Susan to take down the middle. And then, hopefully, if that all goes to plan and I completely pulverise these 2 areas, I can then turn units around and start throwing them in front of this lot just to keep it away from me until the end of the game. Give up those tokens. So turn 1. I go first. I can't remember if I went first intentionally or if I took the option to go first. Because you do want to get to the tokens first, and there's no real benefit to going last in terms of jumping onto territory. So, going first, Susan moves up out of everybody's line of sight behind this church, and the others move up a little bit, but not much. They don't want to get charged, because obviously this is the hold-up area. So Susan is staying here for now, because I don't want my opponent to immediately, as soon as the game starts, march everything this way, because I've totally abandoned the flank. So I'm not totally abandoning it yet. Susan is sitting just here, so that she can act as if she's a threat this way, but ideally I want to be going over there, probably. In the middle, the grotesques move up, and I don't think the enemy are going to be too keen to engage because I've got quite a superiority with these 2 compared to 1 unit coming in, especially if it's coming in hindered as well. I think the giant is the only thing that matches their speed. Are those guys 6 or 7? I think they're 6, but there's the fly there as well. So both of those units could potentially get in, but I have got some other heroes around as well. So this is the flank where I'm most confident. So I've put the gargoyles further forward. If you want to come and charge them, you're fine, because whatever you charge them with will get killed. And then if we just start trading, I think I'm good with that, because I've got Bracky here as well, who can easily take out that unit, potentially. So on to turn 1 for the Riftforged Orcs. So they push up, they're not paying too much attention to Susan. And they generate a token there, pick one up, pick up a loot counter with the fight wagons, which will slow them down if they want to hold on to it till the end of the game, of course. And this guy is looking down the flank a bit, but he's not that close, and I'm planning on going further away as well. In the middle, not much of an advance going on there, and not much of an advance going on there. So nice cinematic shot through the grotesques there. And yeah, not very eventful turns going on there, first of all. There is a bit of shooting from the breath attack from the slasher, which does some damage to the gargoyles and kills them. So that's mildly inconvenient. On to my turn. So, the Immortal Guard just make sure they're not being flanked by anyone and prepare to face a charge. Susan flies away to attack the enemy flyer in the centre and does 5 wounds. And everyone else just kind of encircles the enemy. So if they want to push in, it might not end well for them. Because even if they double charge, those guys there, that are the scary unit, are going to be hindered whichever one of these 2 they attack if it's in the form of a double charge. And the big giant doesn't care anyway, but I think I stayed out of charge range of the Thunder Seekers for now. And I'm hiding my half-breed champion at the back behind this unit because I don't want that flyer to get me had I not done any damage to it. But Susan has actually done 5 wounds, so it's actually in danger. It could still deal with the grotesque champion. And over here, so I've sent the gargoyles into the Hellstrikers Manticore cavalry unit, meaning that this unit here at the front and the flying hero, both of those could potentially charge into my half-breed units, which I'm okay with because they're going to take, the Hellstrikers will take a turn killing the gargoyles, and then Bracky can go into them as well. And I think the half-breed units, even though they're not that survivable, these 2 units don't have many attacks. So I think that is going to work out nicely for me. What would have been more scary for me, I think, would be if the Hellstrike horde wasn't visible to the gargoyles, so I couldn't tie them up. They're the one unit I would want to tie up, because they're the one thing, with an unhindered charge, they could definitely kill one of the half-breed regiments in 1 hit. So the fact that they're the ones who had part of them poking out, and the other 2 units weren't covering their front, I am down with. So they only do 1 wound, but that's enough to stop them flying, so we're good there. And we've definitely got 3 distinct battles going on here, but this one, obviously, not really in my favour, but that is by design. So, turn 2 for the Riftforged Orcs. So the Slasher has gone off this way and is just ignoring this side of the battlefield now because they've already got it well in hand. The fight wagons go into the Immortal Guard. Susan takes a wound from the breath attack, I think. Oh no, that's too far away for that, surely. Oh, takes a wound from Cloak of Death from the Giants, that's the one. So these two do go into the half-breeds, as predicted, but I think they would have been much scarier if they'd gone for a double charge here. Now, negatives to doing that, of course, because you're leaving both half-breed units with their full complement of Thunderous Charge then when they hit you back. But I think they've got a much better chance of killing one of them. And putting me down to one fighter unit here is quite a big deal, because it's going to take me a long time to get through them all. So I would have considered doubling up here rather than singling up. And I think the slasher shoots at something around here. There we go. 1 damage to the Grotesque Champion. And wavers it with a 6/6. Wow, wow, wow. So, the Immortal Guard survive against the fight wagons, which is good. Only 8 wounds, so that's holding up both these units for a bit, which is their job. The half-breeds take 4 wounds each from those two, but that's not enough. Yeah, so had they doubled up there and done 8 damage total, that's still not enough to guarantee you would kill them, because we do have Bracky here with Very Inspiring, but you would have had a much better chance to maybe waver one of them. So, yeah, because these two, I think, will be dead soon. Maybe not in one round, but we'll see. The gargoyles are going to get eaten by those manticores, obviously. They take loads of damage. But what's this? They lived? Is that my opponent picking up a double 1? Yes, the gargoyles have been double 1'd. So that's going to save me a bit of trouble. Can block them up for another turn. So on to turn 3. What am I going to do here looking at this scene? So, I want to start getting tokens from this heap, otherwise I'm not holding any. My Abyssal half-breed champion and Susan would like to charge the slasher, because both of them together, they've got a good chance of doing something to it. Even if we just waver it, that's good, but even just doing damage to stop it flying is going to keep it in a bit of an annoying location for the enemy. The Immortal Guard are going to countercharge there, of course. These 2 half-breed units are going to countercharge into those 2, and I'm going to put Bracky and the gargoyles into the Hellstrike cavalry there. And hopefully get something out of that, but it's not that many attacks, so I'm not expecting to get any real progress there. Here is the annoying part, because they're backing away, so I'm going to have to close the gap, but try and keep the wall as a problem if they wanted to charge me first. So, the Immortal Guard regenerate quite a few wounds back, and then do 5 to the enemy, which is nice. Susan and the half-breed champion do 8 wounds to the slasher. Down here, we're pushing up and getting tokens off the stack with the grotesques. Gargoyles and Bracky do some wounds, which is obscured by the edge of the wing, the exact number, but they don't kill them. Manage to kill the small unit there, whose name I've forgotten, and don't kill the Manticore hero. But I do regenerate a couple of wounds back on both of them as well, which is good. And you can see the gargoyles have got some of their wounds back as well. So a bit of a blurry look at the overall battlefield, so it's looking okay at the moment. A couple of units holding on against the odds, like the gargoyles, we're now able to help. So, what is my opponent going to do in turn 3? It's time for a double charge. So the Thunder Seekers have gone straight into these grotesques, and the Giant has gone into these ones. Now they're both unhurt. At least this one is inspired by the Grotesque Champion, but he's been attacked by the Manticore there as well. They're not actually side on, they're too pokey on their bases, so we just turn them to their side. Over here, the Slasher counter-charges against Susan rather than the Half-Breed Champion. The Half-Breed Champion has lower nerve, so I would have considered counter-charging the Half-Breed Champion and hoping to kill it and overrunning. But if all you want to do is damage to prevent Susan flying, then obviously Susan is a fine alternative. Fight wagons are going back into the Immortal Guard. Those guys are still kind of stuck there. And the Hellstrike cavalry decide to countercharge Bracky instead of the gargoyles. Because obviously if they kill Bracky, they could overrun and kill both. That would be the dream for them. So, this guy obviously countercharges into those half-breeds. Let's see if they manage to kill anything. So, the Immortal Guard are finished off this time. So the Fight Wagons, on their initial charge, they didn't really do much at all compared to their number of attacks, but on this round they really made up for that. So the Immortal Guard are dead. They now turn this way. They're now in play. And 6 damage to Susan, but not enough to worry her yet. 4 damage to the Grotesque Champion, who also stays alive. Wavering these Grotesques after 6 damage, that is very disappointing. It's a very good roll to do that. And the other one is killed with 12 damage. So yeah, that is unfortunate. So we've lost 1 unit of Grotesques and the other one's wavered. So really, if that one was going to die, this one I would hope would survive quite happily so that they could then countercharge the giant. But obviously that's not the case. So the middle is suddenly not looking very healthy for me. So on this side it's looking okay though, because Bracky survives the cavalry attack and the half-breeds only take 1 more damage, so they're fine as well. So this flank is obviously surrendered by me, but I'm doing a good job holding them up with my 2 individuals there on the slasher, who is now kind of boxing in everybody else. In the middle we're down to 1 unit of Grotesques, which is not ideal. This side is going fine, but as I mentioned earlier, the half-breeds are kind of stuck on this side now. So the middle, I need my individuals over here to do the job. So turn 4 for me, managed to kill off the flying hero with these half-breeds. The other one, the other unit, I think they join in with the charge on this unit here with the gargoyles. And also Bracky by the looks of it, so we managed to kill off those hell strikes. So this flank has been totally cleared out, and the gargoyles are facing this way so they can jump over and sit on tokens, and I'm going to start moving the half-breeds around to get them into the game again. In the middle, the Grotesques just back away a bit. And that's about it. I've also charged my Bull and Susan into this hero and done some wounds to it. And then the half-breed champion goes into the slasher and wavers it. We get it up to 9 damage now, and it's wavered. So that's really good because it's holding up the fight wagons behind it as well. So in some ways that's better than killing it. 5 damage there. The slasher is being represented by that blank base, by the way. So it's still a bit of a mixed bag. In terms of scoring, I'm not that confident that I'm going to win the game at this stage. I think my opponent has got more scoring units in the middle, and that's where the tokens are. And now I'm thinking, rather than being greedy and going for all the tokens, because that's what the tournament scoring dictates, I probably should have focused all my attention on just these 2, which would have been my plan under any other tournament scoring system. Because there is this bit of terrain here, so any units fighting there are struggling to get back again. So, we'll see if that comes back to bite me. Into turn 4. The Grotesques are getting charged by the Thunder Seekers and the big Frost, or Thunder, is it the Storm Giant it's called, isn't it? Storm Giant. So, I'm not confident they'll survive. The enemy Bull goes after Bracky, and not much going on here because they're stuck, fight wagons are stuck behind the slasher. And the flying hero countercharges into Susan. Grotesques are dead, so we've lost both of the Grotesque units without taking one of these units down with them, which is not ideal because there's lots of tokens around here. And Bracky survives that, so I've still got my heroes. Turn 5. So what am I going to do here? Well, I believe my half-breeds actually have a view of the giant. Or do they yet? No, they don't have it yet. So they're trying to get a view to the giant. So they're going to move forwards, and then next turn they're hoping they'll be able to see him. So the other one behind them, they're kind of stuck out the game now. This one can now threaten mostly the giants from that position. The gargoyles just fly over here, pick up a token, and they'll get another one later. So I'm going to have 2 victory points that are going to be unopposed for the rest of the game there. The half-breeds killed the bull, I think, that was there. Bracky went in and attacked the Thunder Seekers, who had already taken some damage, I think. Let me see. Had they? I don't know, because I hit them with Susan as well. So I think Susan and Bracky just killed the Thunderseekers on their own. So that was really good. And having these individuals, obviously there are going to be times where you just roll really badly and don't get the number of hits, but they're fairly reliable, hitting on 3s. And they've got a lot of crushing strength. And brutal. Or dread, should I say. And the dread that comes from the bull as well at this stage of the game. The bull who I've got right here. And with all that combined with the double dread, because it does stack, the dread on the bull does stack with anyone else's dread, so we're able to get rid of them. The grotesque champion does not kill the flyer there, and the half-breed champion there does actually kill off the slasher, which was already wavered and heavily damaged, and then overruns to the fight wagons and just pins them. So this unit could be a problem, because the grotesque champion's going to get killed by them, most likely. Turn 5 for the enemy, so a charge into the half-breed champion. He just doesn't like his chances of survival. Same for the grotesque champion. This guy, who I did waver last time with the champion there, flies or goes backwards. Had I killed him, I could have turned around to face them, so I would have been much more confident. The giant charges into Bracky, and the half-breed champion is dead there. I think they only overrun a small amount, a few inches there. Not the maximum. And the grotesque champion is also dead. Bracky gets wavered, which is kind of annoying because he doesn't have fury or anything. And that's how it looks. So, because of this, I now have a good view of the giant, so I can flank charge the giant with my half-breed regiment there, which is going to be 32 attacks. They were going over a wall, so they'll be on 4s, but should be there with 16 hits. And I think the unit at the front there is the one that has... Let's see, I think that's the one that has Elite and Vicious. So, they should really get more than 16 hits, shouldn't they? Which would then halve again for the wounds. So I'd be hoping to do about 10 wounds to that thing, which would be very nice indeed. However, because we're going into turn 6, and this is the layout, it could be the last turn. I'm holding 2 tokens. The enemy is holding 2 tokens over here on the fight wagons. There are some tokens on the floor. I have to stop the enemy picking them up in turn 6, otherwise they just auto-win the game. So, Susan and the bull both have to try and attack something. So the bull is going to try and finish off this flyer. Susan is going to try and kill these guys. And that's the only way I can theoretically prevent my opponent from automatically just winning the game. If I don't block up these, they can just get straight onto the objective there. So that means these guys are going into the giant on their own because Bracky is wavered. So, let's do it. The bull does his part of the bargain, or her part of the bargain, because it is a lady tiefling there from Bad Squiddo, the miniature. And that kills the hero, the big flying Hellstriker Manticore hero. Susan does 4 damage to these guys, but not enough to worry them. But she's guarding the token. She's failing to regenerate, though, so she's actually really in the danger zone. I don't think she's regenerated any wounds yet. So, very disappointing. Same for Bracky, he fails. Now, you know how I was saying, even with this hindrance, I was expecting about 10 wounds on the giant, which I would then add to with dread from Bracky. Does that look like a 10 to you? That kind of looks more like a 3, doesn't it? Yep, the most abysmal round of attacks from the half-breed regiment ever. 3 wounds. Pathetic. The gargoyles are obviously just happy over their scoring, and the other units are moving up a bit in case there's a turn 7 they might be able to join in. So if that giant died, suddenly this looks like an interesting game, because I would kind of own the centre, but as it stands, I can't do anything to stop the enemy picking up some tokens, so if it ends on turn 6, they just win. Turn 6, so the giant charges Bracky and just lands on a token and picks it up, as you would expect. These two double charge Susan, because they'll want to kill her and then try and overrun, which they would need a 3+ to get onto that token, so that's the best I could do, really. And then they could overrun and hit the bull. In case there's a turn 7, they'd be able to stop it doing anything else. They do manage to kill Susan. They do overrun onto a token. They do overrun into the bull. They do kill the bull. And they do kill Bracky as well. So my opponent is holding loads of tokens now. And Is the game going to end? Yes. So I did score a couple of bonus points for holding some tokens there, so that translates directly into tournament points, so that's okay. We both killed a lot of stuff. What have I got left? I've got all my half-breed regiments, and I've got gargoyles left. My opponent has got fight wagons, the giant, and this unit here. Is that everything? Yeah, there's not a lot left alive at all. So, I did have a couple of poor dice rolls in there. My opponent would have hoped to possibly kill my Immortal Guard one round sooner. Maybe with the fight wagons with that number of attacks, but they are defense 5-17. So I would have hoped they would have survived a round as well, which they did. And yeah, so this giant obviously should have taken more than 3 damage. I don't know if doing 10 damage with Dread from Bracky would have been enough to kill it anyway, but if it was enough, then that would have made it a very interesting finale. The main issue I had with this piece of terrain here, and because of the way it's scored, I was going after all of the token stacks rather than focusing on 2 of them like I normally would. And I'm also, this is the first time I've run this list, this is the first time they've been on the table at all together, because I only finished painting them the eve of the tournament. So no practice games with a fast Abyssal Dwarf list, so this is the practice game. Round 1 is the practice. So, on to some photos of the armies. So there's mine. Very snazzy looking, I think you'll agree. Then we've got the Riftforged Orcs from my opponent from that game. We have got some Basileans. Basileans were represented quite heavily at this event. There were, I think I saw 3. Well, we'll find out in a minute, won't we? Because I definitely saw 3 of the Phoenixes around. Some more Basileans. These ones are obviously ridiculously well painted. To a ridiculous degree. As were 2 of the other armies, in my opinion, that I'll get to as well. You're only allowed to vote for your 2 favourite though. So this one has won a lot of awards, a lot of painting awards, and you can see why, because it's very, very nice. There are lots of close-up images of this army in my previous videos, because I've been to a few events where it's been there. We've got some Ratkin. We have got some goblins, with some big squigs and spiders and stuff in there. I'm not sure what these guys are representing, whether they're trolls, possibly. Could they be trolls, or could they perhaps be more beasts? Unknown. We've got Empire of Dust. We have got Night Stalkers, so this is one of the others. Now, from that distance, you can't tell that this is a ridiculously nicely painted army. All you can tell is that it looks cool, and it's got an amazing themed display board. But when you're actually getting close, I don't know if my pictures do them justice, but the brush strokes are very, very nice indeed. You've probably seen these on the Kings of War Facebook group, Kings of War Fanatics. So if you haven't, you can find pictures of them there. I think there's a couple of units here that weren't in the army as well, because this is quite a low point level event, just 1,995 points. We have got Order of the Brother Mark, so that could account for some of the Phoenixes that I saw. We have got Trident Realms. Now, I have played against these before. My huge bit of praise for this army is that all the units fit perfectly into their base and do not overhang, which is the absolute dream. One day I will aspire to create an army that fits into its base and does not overhang at all, and if everyone did that, we'd be able to play a very clean game of Kings of War with no proxy bases, no models having to turn sideways because their nose is too long. But you can also blame Mantic for that, for making their models large. Got halflings that were quite spread out, so you can't really see too much detail there. We have got, I assume these are ogres. Yeah, they are. I don't know what these ones are representing, these crypt horrors. Some kind of ogres, I assume they're representing there. Down on this table, we've got some... is this nature? Oh no, this is I think this is Green Lady. We have got a fellow Andy in the chat. We've got Nigel in there as well, who agrees with me that practice games are for wimps. They certainly are. Round 1 of a tournament is the ultimate practice game. Now, the Andy that we've got in the chat there is well known for his masses of zombies, so we're going to look at his army in a minute, actually. Now, this is some unique basing on these salamanders. Now, from a distance, you think, what's going on there? Is that some kind of weird techno pattern? But when you get closer, actually, I thought, yes, this is clearly some kind of temple over a stream of lava. And when you get in close, you can actually see it's a very cool effect. On the salamanders, we've got an army of unknowns here that wasn't put out on display, so I just grabbed a quick sneaky picture of it. We've got some twigletkin with some, I think these are heavily 3D printed, these models. So very nice. Some nice big titans. We've got another kind of jumbled army on the tray rather than on display, so quick sneaky picture of them. Forces of Nature. This is an army that I faced at a friendly event recently. If you want to watch that video, it was the previous Kings of War tournament report to this one, but not a real tournament, it was only a friendly event. Got some ogres, that's not a lot of models, is my first thought there. You don't get many ogres for your points. We have got some more Basileans, another Phoenix. We have got some Trident Realms, with lots that's going to ensnare you there, I imagine. We've got some Northern Alliance, with some of the new Boids, so plenty of flying speed goodness there. We've got some Forces of the Abyss, also very cool, and some big Arch Fiends, I assume. We've got some Slow Dwarves, so Slow Dwarves still turning up. We've got some War Machines in there. We have got, now, these are ogres, aren't they? But they're kind of Slayer ogres. And if we were able to pick a top 5, this army would have definitely been in my voting for the top 5, just because it's so cool. Then we've got Empire of Dust, shamelessly using Necrons as Empire of Dust, which is a bold move at a Kings of War event, especially at the Bullrun, where the sportsmanship score was reduced in its overall effect this year. So sportsmanship not being valued as highly at this event by the scoring system, which means that if you wanted to reach across the table and start a fight with someone for bringing Necrons to a Kings of War event, then there would have never been a better time at the Bullrun to do so. So a risky and bold move. And this is the undead army in question that normally has about 1 billion zombie hordes. This time, that has been traded in somewhat. So we've still got 4 zombie hordes and a legion, but there's also actually kind of a hard-hitting wing to the army now as well. So there's some whites, 2 zombie troll hordes, 2 gorblights, and some heroes. I assume that's a vampire. We've got some standard bearers, necromancers, and there's the bull there. So less zombies than usual. This is one of the armies that I would be concerned about facing, because I have a lot of Thunderous Charge and Crushing Strength, most of which is going to be wasted against the kind of thing I'm going to be allowed to charge. And the zombies are going to cover quite a wide frontage. They've got really high nerve as well, so it's no guarantee I'd kill them in one hit. And then the hard-hitting stuff behind has a decent chance at killing the likes of my half-breeds in one hit. So zombie trolls could potentially take them out in one go. So I'd be kind of worried about facing this, depending on the scenario though. Then we've got more Basileans. So they're very fashionable at the moment, lots of Elohai around, and it's easy to understand why. Speed 10, hard-hitting, large infantry unit. Then we've got some goblins. Now, this is definitely one of the technically best paint jobs there as well. And I think this one got one of my votes for best army. So what's in there? We've got the trolls at the back there, with a goblin mounted on their back. I guess they're not the shooty versions of the trolls. Actually, yeah, because you could run them as the shooty versions in halflings. I don't know if he's thinking about doing that, maybe magnetising the goblins in there and starting a halfling army. But they are nicer than the goblin trolls, the halfling ones, so I can understand using them. Plenty of mincers at the back there. Very cool. more Northern Alliance with more of the Boyds. So another fast Northern Alliance army. And on to the next round. We've got Kahadin. I'm not entirely sure how to pronounce that, but I gave it a go. Were there any halflings? Yes, one halfling army at the event. So into round 2, and what have I come up against? I've come up against the Night Stalkers with that very nice display board. So obviously I'm well versed with Night Stalkers, having played them a lot. What have we got here then? So we've got 3 troops of Reapers, which are, for 125 points, are actually pretty decent as kind of an expensive end of the chaff scale, because they've got 15 attacks hitting on 3s with crushing strength 1. So they're actually very dangerous as far as chaff units go. They just can't survive anything, because they're only defense 4, 10, 12. So, Braki Barker, for instance, or Basusu, or the half-breed champion would be looking at them and thinking, that looks like a tasty snack. I'd be able to eat them in one go. Tormentors, we've got a regiment of them, which are the leaping versions of the Reapers. So, what do they lack? They lack the defense. They're only defense 3, but they can fly. Speed 7. And they have the leap ability, so they can consider themselves taller when declaring a charge. So they're quite scary. Nimble as well. Let's see, there are some Butchers with a Staying Stone. So they're always a bit tough to shift. Then we've got some Ravagers, which are the Shooty Butchers. Just 1 unit though, which makes them a lot less scary, I think. Just 1 unit of them. So kind of like Ogre Boomers. Shadowhounds. So I think Shadowhounds are the new hotness in the Night Stalker list. So even though they get pretty pricey, they're speed 10, and when you get an unhindered charge, they're hitting on 3s. With Thunderous Charge 1, 2 because the Helm of the Drunken Ram, which is almost an auto-take for Shadowhounds now. If you've got 1 unit, that is the upgrade set to take, because you're looking for unhindered charges anyway, and you're probably not going to take on other charges, so why not just double down on that? And then if you take a 2nd unit, you can look at other options like making them elite, or maybe the Brew of Strength. If you're doing a hindered charge with them, you're then hitting on 5s rather than 3s, so it's a massive drop-off. So you really only want the unhindered charge with them. There is a Mind Screech, which is a Planar Apparition variant, so it's got healing ability and Mind Fog. A Terror, which has Ensnare, and it's just really gribbly, tough to get rid of with regeneration. Portal of Despair, just to give something inspiring and have a bit of a roadblock for 90 points. A Banshee with Enthrall and Windblast, and Resonant Chorus upgrade so that it can do both of the spells at once. Then there is a Horror with Vicious for infantry. There's a lot of infantry to benefit from that, and Banechant. So the mission, I didn't take a picture of the mission, but I can describe it quite easily because these markers are on the table as well. So, the game is like 2 games of Dominate, and you score over the course of the game. So you ignore the token in the middle at the start. So in rounds 3, 4 and 5, you score 1 point if at the end of the round you are controlling a Dominate zone. So if you're controlling 1, you'll get a point. If you're controlling 2, you get 2 points. So you can potentially get 6 points between rounds 3 and round 5. 6 points up for grabs. The final point is to hold this objective in the centre at the end of the game. So you can build an unassailable lead if the enemy stands off you. So you really have to go forward. Which means, do you want to go first so you can dive straight in there and lay down a marker? Do you make the enemy go first so that you can allocate your forces into the zone and jump into places they can't counter you? Interesting. It depends on the army, I think. So there is 0 shooting coming from me, which means the Night Stalker's army-wide stealthy rule is kind of wasted. But that also means that when I attack them, because I've got so much inspiring, they're always going to be inspired. And if you're shooting Night Stalkers, then obviously they're too far away to be inspired generally. So it does balance out a little bit. I'm worried about being wind blasted. The Banshee is over there who can do some wind blasting. So I'm going to start, once I'm moving up, I'm going to kind of tuck units behind other units if I don't want them to get wind blasted. Let's see. Kay says, those dominate zones look small in the video. Are they 12-inch radius or less? So, the smaller dominate zones in this scenario, they are actually smaller than a full-size dominate game. You've got 2 smaller zones. So I think they are 12 inches across rather than 12 inches from the centre point. So they are smaller. Death by Dragons missed the start. Did I say nice things about you? I don't even know if I mentioned you at all as the TO, other than critiquing your scenario choice and scoring system. So, takeaway points so far are that the scoring system encouraged me to spread out more in Game 1 than I normally would have done, which potentially led to my demise, because people who are regular viewers of this channel will know that I like ignoring an objective generally and focusing in one place. In this scenario, I don't feel I could afford to do that, because I'd be giving up 3 points over the course of the game if I just totally abandoned the objectives. So, on this side, I've got the bulk of my force because we don't have this ridiculous great tower in the middle there blocking any of their access to the centre at the end of the game. So I've got most of my stuff here. On this side, I've only got a few units, but you'll see what my plan is for that in a moment, because we've also got the Half-Breed Champion and Susan right there as well. So, over on the left flank, we've got Brecky, who's turned sideways, so he can steal an extra half an inch by turning sideways at the start of the game. We've got the Bull behind the Grotesques, we've got the Gargoyles, we've got all my half-breeds. These half-breeds, if they get on the hill, potentially they can get even more Thunderous Charge, because this is the one that does not have the Helm of the Drunken Ram. These ones are elite, so the extra Thunderous Charge might come in handy for them, against such units as Butchers, perhaps. Over on this side, we've only got the Grotesque Champion, and Gargoyles, but we also have these two who can help out this side as well. So this side of my army with the Grotesques is facing down this lot. So we've got the Tormentors, we've got Reapers, and we've got Shadowhounds. Shadowhounds on the hill are bad news because they have Thunderous Charge 3 coming off that hill if they're unhindered. So my goal is to punch the hounds in the face, stop them having Thunderous Charge. That sounds like a very easy plan to me. These guys, I don't care if they get on the hill because they're a flyer, so they can't benefit from it. Into the middle. Death by Dragons. Hope those circles were 12-inch radius. That's what the scenario was. Interesting. Are you suggesting that these are too small? Is that what you're suggesting, Mr. Death by Dragons, Steve? We were handed these, I believe, by one of the other players, suggesting that they were the right size. So I'm assuming that they are correct. I suppose I could just look at the tournament pack, couldn't I? Let's pull that up right now and look at the scenario. And I think that these are standard size, like I think they're from Age of Sigmar, so I know how big they are. So let's have a look at the pack. I'm onto the Facebook page for it now. And cracking open the tournament pack, which I assume has the missions in it. Okay. No, they're not in the pack. So where the heck are they? I can't seem to find them in there. On the page in the discussion. See. I can't see them in here. That's very strange. Yeah, I can't seem to find those. So, let's just assume that they are perfectly fine, shall we? That they're perfectly legitimate and there are no issues with that whatsoever. because Steve is suggesting that they are too small, but we're going to ignore that and press on. Yes, so apparently these are incorrect. So whoever handed these to my opponent and then put them on the table has deprived us of the ability to have larger dominate zones to contest. So there you go. So yeah, they should be larger. What's that? You've tagged me in a post. Let's have a look. Okay, yep, I'm looking at it right now. Okay, yeah, so these are too small. That is wild. So I don't know who it was that handed them to us. I can't remember. My opponent would know if my opponent watches this video. So we're using areas that are too small. So ignore that fact and just plough on. So in the centre, my opponent has got the Mind Screech, some Reapers, Butchers, Portal of Despair, and on the left, more Reapers, the Ravagers with their shooting attack, the Bull, and the Terror. So turn 1. And I think I encourage my opponent to go first. Let's have a look. Nigel says, nightmare for my Elves Dragon list, but I like the idea of the multi-part scenario above. Yeah, I like a scenario thrown in now and then where you can score over the course of the game rather than all at the end. So, my opponent has advanced. Now, why did I give away the first turn? Because there's no real shooting coming towards me. And because I've got a decent amount of speed in my army, my opponent is limited in where he can actually advance to anyway, unless he wants to get charged. So I also want to have the last crack at taking a turn in the game, basically. Because if my opponent wants to score in each round, he's got to put his units in the area, which means I then get a turn to see how much stuff I need to put in there to take it off them. So, because the scoring is going to happen immediately after my turn, so I feel like it's an advantage to go second for that reason. So, turn 1 for me. The Gargoyles and the Grotesque Champion. The one thing that I do not want to hit my Grotesque Horde is the Shadowhounds off a hill, because they would probably mince it to death. So, they are nimble though, so if you want to block them in, you have to make sure that there is physically no way for them to reach you. So in this instance, I think I have done that with the pivoting that they would have to do. I'm not 100% sure looking at this whether that's actually successful or not. Let's see, because they can do one pivot, go down this way. Maybe it would be tricky. I'm not sure if they could make it, and if they could, they would definitely be hindered, which makes them useless. So, yeah, because they'd be hitting on 5s with a hindered charge, rather than 3s with an unhindered charge. So I don't mind if they have to take a really long detour and go through the woods to hit me. They can't fit through there, that's the important thing. The Leapers I've kept out of range of them, because I don't want to be hit by them either. And you can actually, I didn't mention it last time, but Susan is now in range to charge that unit. That's the only unit that my opponent left in range for Susan. So, a quick note to Steve there in the chat as well. As the TO, doing your rounds of the tables, I'm laying the blame entirely at your door for not spotting that we were using illegally sized templates. So there you go, those are my thoughts on the matter. So Susan charges into the Reapers there, just does 3 damage, but she does wave them, which is a really annoying thing to do because now the Butchers are stuck in there. John has got an interesting point here. So, okay, this has started some controversy. Discussion says 2 times 12-inch dominate circles, which implies a circle that is 12 inches. Note it does not say 12-inch radius, although the diagram does show 12-inch being the radius. So, okay, I can then understand why whoever gave us the templates made the mistake. If they only read it and didn't look at the accompanying image. So that's further evidence that the TO is entirely to blame for this fiasco. Exhibit B, if you will. So, let's see. The reason that the half-breed champion is here is because, let's see, no one can charge him. Apart from the Portal of Despair, which is garbage at fighting. So, outside of the Ark of the Butchers, perfectly safe. Susan is now safe because the Reapers are blocking the Butchers in. And I've put my gargoyles right in front of the Terror and the Ravagers, so that I've put my half-breeds up there on the hill. Bracky, you might think, what's Bracky doing? He's supposed to be in there fighting. I do not want the Banshee to pop out over here and wind blast me backwards off the hill. Or even wind blast me sideways and out of charge range. So Bracky is just at an angle so that those half-breeds cannot be wind blasted anywhere. Because I want units going into here from turn 3 onwards. The Immortal Guard have moved up. These half-breeds are being guarded by the Immortal Guard there. The Grotesques, these are the ones with Boots of Striding. They've gone into the woods. So I'm safe from being hit by most of this stuff. There is not a big projection of threat that I'm receiving from the Night Stalker's army at the moment. What do I think is threatening? The Ravagers shooting at half-breeds is a potential threat, if they could shoot here. But that means the Gargoyles are unattended, so you'd have to throw maybe the Terror into them, and it'll almost certainly kill them. Will that shooting attack of the Ravagers kill the half-breeds? Probably not on its own. You would need to maybe use the Banshee's resonant chorus to try and do damage as well. And maybe you'd get something out of that. You could maybe get a waiver, but you're going to be hit by these units. Because if the Terror is going in there, that means these guys are going to have to come forward a bit to there, so they could then be hit by the half-breeds if the Immortal Guard go into the Terror. And Susan is safe, as we established, because she wavered the Reapers. So on to turn 2. We have got Reapers, this is on my right flank, have gone into the Grotesque Champion. In the front, but I've just turned him sideways because he's... Look at that weapon. How are you supposed to fit that on the base? Honestly, Mantic. The... What are they even called now, that unit? The Jumpy Dudes. They jump over... Let me just go back and show you where they were. So they were here. They have jumped over the fence to there, which is not necessarily a bad move, because they're going to be safe from everything that isn't an individual. On the other hand, they're not looking anywhere menacing, and if I push forward out of the woods, they can't see anybody anyway. So they're kind of out of it for a turn. Let's see. John thinks the standard Dominate Circle is too large. Well, maybe we played the superior version of the scenario then. How about that? So, is much accomplished here. The Portal of Despair goes into my gargoyles. So, the plan here is obviously to keep the dogs safe, because those dogs are like a loaded gun, and you don't want anyone putting a cork in the end of that loaded gun. I think that's how it works. Yeah, those dogs are an incredibly potent killing machine, but I've only presented them with garbage they can kill at the moment. So they're like a coiled spring waiting to pounce on something as soon as a juicy target opens up. And if it could clear out both my chaff units, that would open up the Grotesques at the back there, which are the juiciest of targets in this list. So the Immortal Guard are charged by Reapers. And yeah, so that's it. The shooting is going to be aimed at the gargoyles. The Terror has just gone backwards a little bit, if anything. I think that's to stop it being multi-charged. But my plan isn't to attack that thing in the front anyway, because it's got ensnare, and it's in difficult terrain. Gargoyles are shot off by the Ravagers, as you'd expect, but that means all my half-breeds are untouched this turn. The Reapers do 4 wounds to my Immortal Guard, and the Grotesque Champion is dead. The Gargoyles survive the Portal of Despair's furious onslaught. And what are we going to do here? Well, let's have a look. We've got Susan there, and we've got the half-breed champion there. Susan is in range to charge the dogs. So that is the dream, because she only has to do 1 wound, and she takes away their Thunderous. Because on that hill, charging down, they would be on Thunderous 3, which is obviously horrific to face. So Susan's going to have a piece of that dog meat. Then I can kind of go forward and just attack things without worrying too much about the dogs. Once they've lost their Thunderous, they're nowhere near as terrifying. And you never know, she could actually waver them as well. This unit I'm going to ignore by leaving the woods, so they can't see anything yet. And I'm going to double charge the half-breeds there and the grotesques there. They're going to use their boots of striding, and I'm going to double charge the Ravagers, because I want them dead. And I think that leaves me in a pretty solid defensive position with only a Banshee behind me, which I'm not concerned about. And then I can put the Immortal Guard back in there. I could maybe double charge with these half-breeds, but I'm not sure they're going to fit, so they might have to just shuffle sideways and wait for next turn. So, turn 2. The grotesques managed to kill those Reapers. The half-breeds there did have to go sideways because they wouldn't fit in for the double charge, but the Immortal Guard do kill the Reapers there because their nerve is very low. And over here we do kill the Ravagers with the double charge in the front. The grotesques are turning to face the enemy. They are going to get hit by multiple units here. And because of the particular angles involved, they can potentially get triple charged by all 3 of these. But many of them will be hindered, though, because of this bit of terrain. I put the half-breed champion into the Mind Screech, so I'm kind of wasting my scythe that's going to give me extra attacks against infantry and anything else that's small and crummy. But it does mean that this Mind Screech isn't going to heal anything, and it's not going to do any spell casting at all, and I thought that would be handy just in case I'd failed to kill this unit somehow. And also, just going forward, getting it wounded so it'll be easier to kill later. And if it wants to waste time healing itself rather than other units, that's cool with me. I think I actually waver it as well, just so it can't go very far either. And Bracky also joined in down here, I think. Let me have a look. So, Bracky, I think he just moved up to here to spread his dread around between those 2 units that I was charging. And yeah, doing well here with the zone. Dwarven Darkness, spicy battle reports. Yes, this is an incredibly spicy report. So the triple charge does go off, but it was possible because the angles involved. It's normally tricky to pull off a triple charge when you're not facing directly towards the enemy in a line. But on this occasion it worked out perfectly because the butchers were able to just go that way first and then go right to the end and then pivot and then go in. So all of them fit. And although we are on turn 3 now, and my opponent is not going to score this area at the end of turn 3, even if he butchers the grotesques horribly and kills them, there's not going to be enough units that can overrun in there to stop me taking it, so I'm definitely going to score points there. Over on this side, the Portal of Despair has another crack at the Gargoyles. They did 2 wounds to it last time, so this is going to be embarrassing if the Portal of Despair loses to Gargoyles. The dogs haven't decided what to do yet, so my opponent was really conflicted on what to do here, whether to charge Susan, because you won't be hindered, so you'd be hitting them on 3, hitting Susan on 4s, or charging down off the hill. You're disordered though, and you'd be hindered. So you'd be hitting them on 5s because of the woods. So, although if you charge Susan and don't kill her, you're giving up your flank or rear to the grotesques, which is not a good time. So my opponent was very conflicted there. The Tormentors, the jumpy dudes, go into the woods. They're actually facing down my flank now, but they are close to the bull, so I've got something to charge them with that's an individual. So that's going to be the plan there. 17 concurrent viewers. That's pretty good. Pretty good going. Only 5 likes, so that means there are people in here mooching, taking advantage of my tactical advice, not even liking the video. Which is a whole new level of disgrace. It may be even worse than the TO discretions that we discussed a minute ago regarding this scenario in the tournament pack. So let's see if the grotesques get killed, shall we? Well, the dogs decide they're going to countercharge Susan. They're going to take the risk and try and kill her because they're more likely to kill her. 4 damage and a waiver, which means they're now going to get flank charged by grotesques and killed horribly. The gargoyles take 1 wound from the Portal of Despair and they do what they do best, which is get wavered on 1 damage. And the grotesques are dead from that triple charge as expected, but we have got very hard-hitting units staring down this lot now. So we've got 2 half-breed regiments, we've got Bracky, and we've got the Immortal Guard. The Immortal Guard even have a flank on those Reapers, so we're definitely going to kill them. The half-breeds are going to try and kill the Bull and overrun into the Terror, and these half-breeds are going to try and kill the Butchers. My Bull is going to charge into the Tormentors there and just try and stop them flying. So, lots of killing we can do. So I'm pretty confident. Over here, I'm confident the grotesques are going to kill those dogs, and the flank even hindered. And Susan can fly off and attack something else now. So, here we go, turn 3. So this is the turn we can score. So I'm already going to score this area, even if I do nothing. So that's going to be a point. The area over here, I'm going to score that even if I do nothing, so there's another point. So I'm definitely going to take a 2-0 lead at the end of this round, because I've just laid a claim to those zones. Those illegally small zones, should I say. So the dogs are killed by the flank charge, and Susan actually got wavered, so she couldn't charge anyone else anyway, so she's just hanging out up there. So dead dogs, the grotesques turn around to face the Portal of Despair. The Bull is killed, and the half-breeds overrun into the Terror. I managed to stop these flying with the Bull, and the half-breeds managed to kill the Butchers there and turn round. So if the Bull gets overrun, then at least they're going to be facing the right way. The Immortal Guard and Bracky and all this stuff combined managed to just clear out several units there. So it's looking very good. And I've got 2 victory points for holding each of the dominate zones. On to the next turn. So my opponent not only needs to kill things, but also needs to score points. Otherwise, if my opponent is not controlling one of these zones in the next round, I am going to take an unassailable 4-0 lead. So, round 4. The Mind Screech rear charges the half-breeds. Mind Screech doing a charge is an underrated move. I've done it before when the opponent just gives up a rear to them, because they do have 5 attacks. So it's just the lack of crushing strength that does it. So they're not that great. The Tormentors go after the Bull. They kill it, they try and overrun, and they hit the half-breeds as well. So yeah, they get killed. And we'll have to live with that, unfortunately. The Terror kills these half-breeds as well, so 12 wounds inflicted there, so that thing did the business. So suddenly this side isn't looking as healthy, but not enough to take it off me, because the Immortal Guard are worth more than the Terror. And even if the Terror got the rumoured boost to Titans and got an extra unit strength, it's still not going to be enough to counter the unit strength 3 of the Immortal Guard regiment. Over here, the Gargoyles do get killed by the Portal of Despair, who then turns to face the Grotesques. Turn 4 for me. So I'm already holding the 2 areas again, so I've already won the game. So that's potentially one downside to this scenario. Going into my turn 4, I already know I've won. It's just going to be about margin of victory now. So, Grotesques kill the portal, so they're going to hold this area safely. The Immortal Guard just reposition. Bracky and the Half-Breed Champion kill the Tormentors. So we've got the Terror facing the wrong way, and we've got a Mind Screech and a Banshee. And a Horror, which Susan charged into and did some damage to, by the looks of it there. So, there we go, I've won the game. Can we all go home now? No, because there's more points to play for. Turn 5. So, my opponent gets into the scoring zone, but unless he kills the Immortal Guard, that's still not going to be enough, because I still have more unit strength than them. And then tries to push them out of the scoring zone. That's very cheeky with the Banshee. And pushes one of my... I think it's Bracky that gets nudged away. So, round 5 for me. Grotesques just need to keep a toe dipped into this scoring area, so then in the last turn they can go and claim the centre, but they're still scoring here for now. Bracky kills the horror, finishes it off, so Susan can fly off somewhere else. The half-breed champion, let's see, who is it? The half-breed champion goes to, kills the Banshee, just to get more kill points. And Susan charged into the Terror, because she had the opportunity to flank charge it, so why not take that? Because you're not going to be suffering from Ensnare, get some damage on it. It's going to regen some though. But if it wants to attack Susan, that's okay. So I score both these areas again. So 6-0. Potential final round coming up, turn 6. So my opponent decides to charge into the Immortal Guard with the Terror, hoping to kill them. And gets them up to 8 damage, does not kill them. So, on my turn, what am I going to do? The Grotesques are just going to move here and just hold this objective. Everyone else, if they physically can, they're going to charge into the Terror. Everybody. So we've got the Half-Breed Champion in the rear, Susan in the flank, Immortal Guard and Bracky in the front. So they'll be ensnared, but that's a lot of attacks coming in there. So all my fighty individuals piling in, and they kill it. So, we're seeing the plus points of this list with all these individuals. They don't score anything, but they are very good at mopping things up. Just charging off in any direction is a very handy tool to have. So that is a massive win. Killed everything apart from a Mind Screech, so maximum points for that round, which makes up for the subpar first round game. And it now puts me in a position from which to strike towards the podium places in the next round. So, up against the Basileans. Now, you may recognise some of this list from Clash of Kings. It was the list that encouraged me to make a faster Abyssal Dwarf list in the first place because of how helpless I felt against almost this exact Basilean list. It's the same player, just a slightly different list because it's a different point level. But these are the units that made me totally change my list outlook and want to play something fast because it just felt like I had no chance against it. So we'll see if the list I've made is actually a good counter to it. So what do we have? We have 2 hordes of Elohai, which is obviously terrifying. It's the fact that actually these ones are only defense 4 because they've gone for the crushing strength 2 option. So they're hittier, but they're also a bit more vulnerable to damage coming back at them, but they can't be wavered. Iron Resolve all the way through the army on all the important stuff pretty much. Ogre Palace Guard are maybe the slowest thing in there, which is slower than most of my army as well. And Gur Panthers, which are, they're not bad, they're not quite as good as Gargoyles maybe, because they've got less attacks than Gargoyles. They've got slightly higher nerve and they're the same price and they don't fly. They do have Vicious though. So I would argue they're slightly worse than Gargoyles. Then 2 units of Paladin Knights, one with Boots of Striding and one just naked. So those are pretty hitty cavalry as well, speed 8. So they're as fast as any of my hard-hitting units. The Elohai are faster. There is a Phoenix, which is mostly there to heal and shoot at stuff, really. There is a Priest with Bane Chant and heal, so quite a bit of healing potentially, so we're going to have to kill things when I hit them. A Elohai hero, the Yor Elohai, who is also speed 10, decent at hitting things. And there's Gnaeus, and this picture text is small enough, so is that Solustis? Gnaeus Solustis, it looks like from here. So that is a speed 9 large cavalry hero with crushing strength, and it's just pretty good. 7 attacks for 180 points, that seems like a really solid choice there. So, what is the mission? I didn't take a picture of it, but I can describe it perfectly. So, briefly, it's kind of like Control, but with objectives. So, you have 2 objectives out on the edge of the battlefield. At the end of the game, to hold one of those will get you a point. There are 2 objectives down the centre of the table, 9 inches from the centre line. The one on your side is worth 2 to you, and the one on the opponent's side of the table is worth 3 to you. So quite similar to control. I would suggest that in most scoring systems, you would definitely 100% ignore one flank in this scenario. In this one, in this scoring system, I'd say ignoring one is fine, because it's only worth one, and you're still fighting over 6 then. So that's going to be my plan here. Fight over 6 victory points and ignore that one. However, what caused me to lose to this army at Clash of Kings? It was the fact that I couldn't stop myself being flanked. I think we were playing, was it Dominate in that one? So I had to kind of be in the middle, and I just got flanked to death. So I've built a list to counter that specifically. So how am I going to prevent myself being flanked? First of all, we've got Susan out on the flank. She is a deterrent to anyone coming and landing over here, because she's just pretty good at fighting. We've also got Bracky Barker over there as well. We've got some gargoyles here who can potentially jump out in front of something and cause a blockage. But mainly, I'm thinking people are going to be worried about Susan and Bracky. There is a hill here as well, and with this positioning, I'm planning to actually put them behind the hill, depending on the enemy advance, to keep them out of sight. Not much in this game can see over a hill. The Grotesques can. This guy can up here, this Gnaeus, and the Phoenix, and that's it. Most of the hard-hitting stuff on the enemy side can't see over a hill unless they're looking at Grotesques. So, I think I've got a decent setup here, and on this side, my counter to being flanked is having gargoyles out there, who are going to prevent anyone from just landing down here, uncontested, and I've got Half-Breed Champion over there. I've got faster units, but overall, it's still a very tricky matchup, I think, because there's lots more speed 10 in this list than there is in mine. So my army brings the speed, this army just brings a bit more than me. So it's still going to be tricky. And I think within the Abyssal Dwarf list, you're very limited in how you can counter these fast lists anyway. Because you just don't have the hard-hitting speed 10 stuff, unless you're paying 300 points for the Ancient Winged Half-Breeds, which I don't think are point sufficient at all. So, there's probably the one game where I would kind of like to have one of those, but generally I haven't been missing it. So in fact I did take a picture of it, it was just in the wrong place, so there you go. If you really wanted to pause the video and read that scenario, then you're free to. So my opponent has the Your Alohi and the regular Alohi unit there. This might be... that's the unit with the Boots of Striding there, the Knights. So we've got some Grr Panthers. Phoenix, the Bull, Palace Guard, Alohi, more Knights, more Grr Panthers, and Gnaeus. So, all I want to do is fight over this triangle and not get flanked. Those are my two keys to victory here. Stay in the important area to control the important zones and do not get flanked under any circumstances. So, going all out to not get flanked, my opponent gives me the first turn, and the reasoning given was that he wanted to have the opportunity to strike last, basically to hit the important areas at the end of the game, which is a valid reason, but because I'm going first, I can now move my two individuals behind this hill, which means that no one can actually see them while also being in range of them at the moment. So that's going to limit what these knights are going to do. If they move on the hill, do they really want to get charged by both of them? I would suggest not. They might not kill you, but they certainly could. And they could definitely waver you. And without your Thunderous Charge on knights, are you going to kill one of them with a counter charge? Probably not, I would say. So, if you're a regiment of knights, yeah, you don't really want to be tangling with these two together. So, they've got an interesting choice to make. The Alohi being speed 10, the fact that I've got this kind of staging post out in front of the army limits their effectiveness. Because if they can just move, let's say here, and be out of my charge range of all my units, but well within theirs, I then have to give them a charge. It just depends what I can put in front of my army to block them off. As it stands, if they go any further forward than about here, I'd actually be able to see them and charge them and stop them flying, which would cover my advance. So I like this little setup here. And depending what the enemy does, I'll then have to look at that and see if there are any good gaps for these two, or whether there's anything that's open that's worth charging, or whether I want to stay there at all. So, turn 1 for my opponent. The Gur Panthers move up, staying out of Susan's sight and not going on the hill. Gnaeus behind them. So Gnaeus can see over the hill, and I can see him, but he's behind the Gur Panthers, so they're just a screen for him. The Knights do not touch the hill, because they are terrified, as they should be. These Gur Panthers move up. And yeah, so this side doesn't fill me with as much confidence, because I don't have enough speed 10, and I don't have anywhere to conceal individuals on this side. This side I'm really happy with, and as soon as I see this setup, I'm thinking, you know what would be a really cool place to be? Between these units, outside of everyone's charge arc. Because the one thing I don't want this army to do is stand off me. Because you get rewarded heavily for killing in this tournament, and I don't want to have to be forced to create engagements later on. I would rather just gently encourage the enemy to move by getting in amongst them and causing some chaos. So these two are going to head into this area here. And if the enemy want to sit there and get double charged by them, they are more than welcome to do that. And that means I don't have to really go in for a full advance with these guys yet, because I'd just be gifting them a nice easy charge. Into, like double into the grotesques would kill them quite easily. But if you're only throwing in those two, maybe that's not the best thing if you're just taking out that unit, because I've got lots here that could potentially see them if they're doing that. So yeah, it's a tricky one. This side I'm less confident in because there's so much speed over there, 2 speed 10 units, and I can't really compete with that, unfortunately. So even though I've brought in the extra speed, there is a lot more opposite me. The Knights at speed 8, I can deal more with them, because I've got speed 8 here. Turn 2 for me. So I throw the gargoyles into the Gur Panthers and double one them. Okay. So why did the gargoyles charge in here? Because I want to kill the enemy chaff before they can chaff me up, basically. So if the enemy were to charge the Gur Panthers into my grotesques, and then that would prevent them from then striking out at the enemy, so they can get closer to me with everything and not suffer a full frontal assault from my army. I don't want them chaffing me up, so I'm going to de-chaff them with my chaff. But I double one them, so that's not going to happen. Susan and Bracky land in their annoying little position there, so nothing can see them, but obviously they can charge. What's important here is that I've put them in different facings on the Knights. So if the Knights want to stay back and stay in this position, I'd be charging into different facings, which means that if they kill one of them on the countercharge, they can't overrun and also kill the other one. So that is my thinking there. And I've dangled out the Grotesque Champion as bait. Now, it's kind of bait, but it depends what you're going to throw at it. Let's see. Death by Dragons. That's a superb move. Those two characters are so frustrating to face for this exact reason. Yes, individuals. I think maybe I've neglected these two a bit in my recent lists and gone for the big flyer instead, but I do miss being able to do this kind of thing when I don't have them. Could he have avoided it by keeping his units together? He could have avoided Bracky getting in there. Susan flew over the top of them though, so it's difficult to stop Susan. The other way to do this really well with Abyssal Dwarves is to take Susan and also take an Overmaster with the Wings of Honeymaze, who is cheap as well and can do the same thing as Susan. So under those circumstances, you could fly them both over the enemy lines, regardless of how close together they are. So what would Bracky have done if they were closer together? If they were closer that way, I would have looked for a gap here. If they were all just a solid line that I couldn't possibly get into, I would have continued to bide my time, probably. And would I have potentially tried to get out of sight of this guy anyway? So maybe I would have gone over here and just looked down the flank, because I don't want this guy charging me over the hill from his defensive position behind those cats. So maybe I would have gone over here if they kept a solid line. But we're not that blessed with a huge amount of units in this game, so it's difficult to keep a solid line with no gaps in it. So we've got these two in play. Grotesque Champion, is this good bait? On the one hand, it's cheap compared to these units, and one of those two, is it a risk sending one of them in to try and kill it? I would say yes. They are not guaranteed to kill it, just one of those two. They've got a chance, but if you want to guarantee that that guy dies, you want both of them in. That completely, he's got zero chance of living with those two charging him. If one of them goes in and you have slightly below average rolls, he could well live. So if you want to guarantee he's dead, you have to throw both of them in. If you don't throw them in now, what happens? They get hit by my two individuals and I advance. If you do throw those two in, you kill this guy, you can then potentially overrun the Elohai forwards, which gets them out of sight of maybe Susan. You could take them backwards, which would prevent them being flanked by the Immortal Guard. But if you take them backwards, you risk them being in the sight of Bracky and Susan. I think Susan's going to be good anyway to see them if they were to do that. The Knights wouldn't be able to go backwards because they would end up on the hill and get charged by Bracky Barker, which would be a bad time for them. So, yeah, it's kind of bait, but I'm not just dangling out that bait in a vacuum. It's not going out on its own. There's also this situation, which is prompting the enemy to realise, actually, being further up the battlefield and being out of sight of Bracky Barker might not be such a bad thing. So maybe they do want to take it for that reason. Turn 2. So the Gur Panthers and Ganaeus have moved into a sneaky flank position. And then the double charge comes in. So it gives me something to think about now. There are these two units looking into my flank. If they kill the Grotesque Champion, do I charge one unit into each? Or do I do a double charge on one and guarantee killing it? Because I've got things looking into my flank. So I've got decisions to make shortly. The Immortal Guard on the hill, you can see that their range is being measured inaccurately, but I did point out that they're only speed, or charge 8, so that stick was removed in a moment. The Elohai and the Panthers charge into, or countercharge in the case of the Panthers, into the Gargoyles, who had double wanded them last time. I've left those 2 dice there because they're not getting used for any more nerve tests in this game, I think. And my Gargoyles, they moved in front of my half-breeds to block them off so they couldn't be charged. I don't think I actually touched on that. Was there a good picture of it in the last turn? Let's go back. Yeah, there we go. So the Gargoyles are completely screening the half-breeds. So the enemy, even though they've got units in range, they can't charge them because the Gargoyles are in the way. So they have to kill the Gargoyles first. So they waver them with shooting, which is kind of okay. It keeps them in play for blockage purposes, but it also blocks my own unit now. These Gargoyles get killed. And still looking okay. And those units, make sure they're out of charge range of the Grotesques. I think that's the most important thing to them. And the half-breeds won't be able to charge because these Gargoyles are in the way. The Grotesque Champion is dead. The Elohai go backwards. Now, if they had gone backwards 1 less inch, I think they went backwards 2 inches. If they went backwards only 1, they would have been in range for the Immortal Guard, who may well have been in the front at that stage, but still, that would have made it very interesting. So, what do I do here? What would you do, in fact? So, we've got half-breeds with Elite and Vicious. We've got Grotesques, who have no attacking bonus with their artifact. We've got Elohai, and we've got some Knights. The Elohai are only defense 4. Knights are defense 5. What do we have in range? We've got these two, and we've also got Susan off camera, who can see both of them. Bracky cannot. So Bracky is out of the equation. But he could possibly charge the Palace Guard if he wanted, but I'm not going to do that, because he's not going to do enough to them in 1 round. What would you do in this situation? Because if I double charge to guarantee killing a unit, it would be the Knights. So I could send them both in there, I could send Susan into the Elohai, but the Elohai do not rely on Thunderous Charge, so just damaging them isn't going to be able to take away their potency. Same for the Palace Guard. So I've put 2 units in there, definitely kill the Knights. I would then have to pivot the half-breeds to protect my flank of the Grotesques from these 2 units, which would then maybe give the flank to the Palace Guard, although they're not nimble, so they might struggle to actually reach that spot there. So that would potentially keep them at bay. I would then get hit by the Elohai. Or do I go in Grotesques there, half-breeds there, and try and kill both of them in one go? Well, let's find out. Turn 3. So, Susan and the half-breeds kill the knights. I decide that they should be enough to kill that unit. However, I did have to use my once per game tournament charity reroll to kill them, even though I only needed a 6. So I had to use that to kill them. And then I also needed a 6 to kill the Elohai. Unfortunately, I rolled a 3. I did kill them with the first roll, I think, and then rolled a 3. So I used my reroll and then failed to kill the Elohai. So we've got one unit down, but it's very unfortunate with that damage that was dealt there. Could have definitely, with average rolling, could have seen off both of those units. That would have been amazing. But as it stands, didn't get rid of them. My half-breed champion kills off the Ger Panthers on the left flank and then goes backwards, so anyone attacking him is more likely to be pulled into range of my other units. And that's it. Mostly just rejigging other things. I think my Immortal Guard goes sideways a bit, just because they want to be contesting this area at the end for this objective. I think they are still on the hill, but when they actually charge off this hill later, I think I forget that they were on it. So looking at the pictures now, I can see that they are actually on the hill still. So Bracky moved up here, by the way, so he could spread his dread aura around to the Elohai and the knights. So that definitely helped kill the knights. But if you're going to roll 3 for a nerve test, this is what's going to happen. Turn 3 for the Basileans. So we've got the Elohai, who are living on borrowed time, and the Palace Guard into the Grotesques, so that could be the end of them. The Panthers... Oh, actually, this guy, because of the angle of this, he can actually reach this unit, we determine. Because he's not perfectly parallel to these units, he's slightly angled off. So he can go pivot to there, then do another 90 degrees and come down here. Is how we worked it out. It's difficult to tell from this picture, actually, but we do determine that he's able to reach them with the 2 pivots. 1, 2, look this way, boom, down there. Because he is nimble. The Elohai go into the half-breed champion there, so if they kill him, they have to back up sufficiently so that my units can't reach them. And my gargoyles are shot off, which is better than them being wavered in this situation, because all they were going to do then is block me in a turn I might like to charge. So the champion is killed, they then back up out of range of the Grotesques. So, had they not backed up far enough to get out of the Grotesques, this would be a really easy choice of what to do next. It would just be a straight-up double charge into the Elohai. As it stands now, if I charge the half-breeds, they're not technically on the hill, but I don't think it matters anyway because they'd be wounding on 2s anyway against the defense 4 Elohai. I'm unlikely to kill them in one round, just as they are. Even though they're elite and vicious, I don't think it would quite be enough to, on average, kill them with Inspired nearby. So, what would that then leave me facing? Knights in the flank with the Boots of Striding. They would go over the wall, no problems, kill them. This guy could then go and hold up the Grotesques for a turn, and then I would be facing off these 2 units with my Grotesques, and they have the speed edge with both of them. They could also throw the Phoenix down here if they really needed something as a last-ditch effort to be thrown in the way. But I'm not feeling great about this flank now. Over here, Gnaeus does a few wounds to the regiment there, but not enough, and the Grotesques are dead. So, you may not think it looks great now that they're dead, but we've still got Susan and Bracky. It should take one of them to finish off the Elohai. So, one of them is going to charge the Elohai, the other one is going to go for the Ger Panthers and try and kill them, because they're just going to score a point if I just leave them alone, so I would rather kill them. The Immortal Guard are in range of the Palace Guard, so I'm going to charge in there. Over here, I'm going to take a bit of a more defensive position now, because I think if I go aggressive, throw them in, I don't think I'll kill them. And then, like I said, I think everything will converge, and there'll be a flank charge maybe coming in here as well if they don't want to. If he doesn't want to go and hold up the Grotesques even. So, yeah, I'm going to take a bit of a defensive position on this side now. So turn 4 for me. Susan goes after the Gur Panthers, 5 wounds, doesn't kill them. The Half-Breed Regiment countercharge into Gnaeus and waver him. Wow. So, Bracky, out of his 6 attacks on 3s, he only hits with 2 of them. So, he ends up doing 2 damage, one of which gets Iron Resolved. He also has Dread. I managed to roll a 3 on the nerve check again. What can you even say to that? So, the Elohai should have been dead twice now, by all rights, but they're still alive, and now they're looking at the flank of the half-breeds. So if they died right now, a turn later than I was hoping, how would the situation be looking? Let's see. So my opponent would be down to Gnaeus, who's wavered, Gur Panthers, and the Palace Guard, who probably won't kill the Immortal Guard in 1 round. So this side of the table I would be very happy with at that stage, because I would still have Bracky and Susan there as well. This side, I'm just setting up a defensive position. So you can see that I have covered each unit's flank there, so they're not going to get hit by anything, and I've put the bull behind them as well. So if they want to charge in, they can, but let's see if they do. So one thing here is that I left my half-breed cavalry open to a charge from them. This was entirely unnecessary, and I don't think I actually checked it, because it doesn't seem like a necessary move. What I wanted to do, though, was, because this side was looking like it's going to crumble for the enemy, I wanted to set up in such a way that encourages them to be aggressive and charge in, because if they're standing off me, they've got the speed superiority, so the longer they stand off, the more I'm standing off as well, and then they're going to eventually be able to hit me at some point, and there might not be enough time left for me to then chew through their units. So I want them to fight me now, because even if I lose some units, it's not that big of a deal if I lose something, because it's not points differential that scores at this event, it's just how much you kill. So I want to encourage them to get into a fight so I can kill some of them and get more points. So I think maybe it was unnecessary leaving these guys in range of the knights, though. Didn't have to be done, I think. But if I didn't put them in range, would they have bothered going in this round at all, or would they have continued to stand off? And if they would, then maybe it was the right thing to do for my objective. It ends up looking silly now because the Elohai lived, and now I've given them charges on both these units. So I've left it in a situation where it could potentially all go horribly wrong now. So we've got Elohai and Elohai into the grotesques, and the Your Elohai and the knights into the half-breeds. They're almost certainly going to die. These are almost certainly going to live. The half-breeds over here get killed by the Elohai that are still alive. Bracky gets charged by the bull, who does nothing. The Gur Panthers run away a bit. The Immortal Guard survive the first round against the Palace Guard, as I would have expected them to. And that's it over there. The half-breeds get killed by the knights. The grotesques get wavered. So yeah, this is really bad now. I would say as soon as I failed to kill the Elohai by rolling a 3 on the nerve check for the second consecutive turn, it was already game over. Because I don't have enough scoring units, and I can't afford not to kill things when I hit them. The enemy's got healing, and I don't have enough units to be trading badly like that, and not killing things in trades. So, it was probably already game over at that point. But I think this move was unnecessary as well. I didn't need to give those knights a charge there. Turn 5 for me. So, I managed to kill the Elohai, finally, and also kill Gnaeus with Bracky and Susan, so I've cleared out the middle a bit. I regen loads of wounds with them, look at that, they've only got 3 on them now. So maybe they'll survive another round against the Palace Guard. Then over here, the grotesques. So, this is kind of a mistake, but it's also just kind of weirdness in the rules. If you just stay in combat, then you're considered still engaged. So then when they charge me again, they won't be hindered. So because I didn't actively move away and say this unit is now disengaged from you, then they can charge me without being hindered. Which I think is a really weird part of the rules So I would say you could just have implied disengagement. If a unit is wavered, what would be the reason to keep them engaged? Is there one specifically in the rules that anyone can think of at the moment to keep a unit engaged while it's wavered? The only thing there are a few shenanigans with if you're engaged on multiple sides. That's the only thing I can think of right now. But yeah, just overlooking the fact to disengage this unit, because they are actually touching, they just wouldn't fit because they're too pointy and there's a wall there. So the fact that I just left them there means they can now be charged unhindered. And if you can't disengage, to be 1 inch away from all enemies. Yeah. So there are some reasons you might want to stay engaged while wavered. You're going to limit enemies' movement. But in this situation, there's no logical reason or practical reason at all that I can think of for them to remain engaged there. But because I didn't specifically declare they are now unengaged, then they are still engaged. So they'll be charged without hindrance. The bull goes into the knights. And yeah, so cleared out a few units. Turn 5 for Basileia. So double charge into the front of the grotesques should kill them now, and double charge into the Immortal Guard should kill them. Yes, and yes. So I now have no scoring units left, so I've definitely lost now. If it wasn't clear already, which it was after I had the second horrendous nerve roll in a row on the Elohai, then I definitely can't score at all now. But I can still get lots of points for killing things. So Susan's going to try and kill the Panthers because they're very easy to kill and it'll just give me some cheap points. Bracky is going to try and kill the Palace Guard. The Bull is going to try and kill the Knights. So Susan kills off the Panthers, which, now, under normal circumstances, this would be needlessly cruel because killing that unit doesn't get me any points in terms of scenario. All it does is deprive my opponent of 1, and we are not going to be competing with each other in the table at the end. Because my opponent's going to win the game, so he'll be well ahead of me. So just taking that point off him is just going to deny him 1 tournament point on the leaderboard without any benefit to me. But because it's a unit that was almost dead, then it's going to give me more kill points. So there is actually a reason to do it. And look at that. Bracky kills the Palace Guard. I believe I had to roll like a 10 or 9 or 10 or 11 big number twice to kill them. And he did it. So good job, Bracky. The Bull does not kill the Knights, however. So we've got some nice kill points into turn 6. Bracky is being charged by the Bull and the Yorelohai, and he gets killed. So he pays the price because it's a good nerve roll to kill him as well. So he's paying the price for what he did to the Palace Guard. And that's going to be that. Susan can't really do much in turn 7. My Bull charges into the Phoenix, doesn't do much. And then turn 7 for my opponent, goes after the Bull. And doesn't actually kill the Bull, I think. But the Bull's not worth any points anyway. Bull by turn 6 is not bad in combat. But what I was finding is that his combat prowess was let down slightly since he's only crushed 1. There were a few occasions where his number of attacks looks okay, but then the crush strength was letting him down. This is what I want though from a tournament special character. You don't want it to be overpowered. It did just enough so it was useful, and the dread was good as well. What one person mentioned actually was that any units that had the cheap item that ignores dread was very useful at this event because everyone has a source of dread with the Bull. So I would have liked the Bull to actually have a different special rule that just has the same effect as dread, so that that item wouldn't negate it. So yeah, I do like a special character that isn't overpowered but is just good enough to be useful and also has a bit of comedy to it. Is always fun as well. So that's going to be the end of the game. Obviously I'm not scoring any tournament points because Susan doesn't score, but I did kill plenty of stuff. What went wrong in that game? Well, it was the 2 things in one go. It was me being a bit too forward and pushing the half-breeds forward there and getting them killed by the Knights, which was a needless move as to try and force a bit of engagement there. Because let's go back and have a look. If I hadn't left them in range, would my opponent have bothered charging in over there in the first place? So in this situation here, if the half-breeds are a couple of inches further back, which they could easily have been, would you bother attacking this line? You could probably only hit the grotesques, hindered charges from these two. These guys are then out of range. I think he may well have just stood off for the rest of the game, or until late, and then jumped onto an objective. Charged in, taken the objective, so maybe he would have killed less stuff overall. So yeah, probably an unnecessary move to be in their range, and it was mostly accidental. I just don't think I measured there. I moved them forward, but didn't double check the range on those guys. So if he thought it was a genius ploy, then it wasn't particularly. I did want to bring them forward to tempt maybe the Phoenix to come in, because that's going to do nothing. And to tempt the Phoenix to come in to pin me, with the Knights coming in behind, so that then they could get the jump on me. But I think I would kill the Phoenix easily and then keep my defensive line. So maybe, if he's really desperate to come in, that is, because the Phoenix is actually doing a decent job for him holding that home objective. So it was really the two horrific nerve rolls on the Aloha, because if they'd gone last turn, this whole situation would have been looking great. If they went this turn, it would have still been looking pretty good, because the half-breeds would have still been alive. Because I think they wavered this guy, so he wouldn't have been able to do anything to them. I would have then killed him the next turn, turned round, faced the rest of the game, and that would have made it a very interesting finale. I'm still, even at this stage, running low on scoring units, though, because that's just the list. I've only got 8, and then 3 non-scoring units. So, all in all, I think that was a really good game. I think we both had some really good manoeuvres, set up some really good angles, moved units in interesting ways, and that's the kind of game I like to have in Kings of War, where you're calculating angles, giving your opponents different puzzles to solve, and they do the same to you. And then you're dangling out bait to each other. Is it best to take it for a potentially easy kill? Do you go double in on the thing to kill it and leave 2 units out in the open? Then what happens when you get hit back? How many moves ahead are you planning? Like chess, you leave a queen out in the open, someone takes it, but then you realise that the queen being in that position means that the enemy have now opened up an avenue of attack into something else that's even more damaging to you, and you're now out of position. So I like those kind of games, and I think we both gave it a good go to create that, creating all those interesting angles and those interesting problems that we posed to each other. And I think we mostly did a good job of countering each other's moves as well. It was just really good back and forth. I think obviously it would have ended up very, very close if I'd managed to kill those 2 units in one go. So I needed to roll 6 4 times on 2 dice to kill them both. And I had a tournament reroll available to me, which I had to use on the first dice roll of those. And I would like to think that 6 is about the point where you feel like an inspired unit should be dying. 7 is very risky, because typically you're either going to roll 7 or you're going to have one that's over 7 and one that's under 7. So you'd think if it was 7 with inspiring, that's where a unit isn't surprised to live. But I think 6 is about the level where you think, even if you're inspired, they should die. So both of them, with a reroll available to me as well. And my centre did not recover from that. All in all, though, I like this list a lot. The one list that I built a fast list to counter, which was this, I think it worked pretty well. I think it mostly did its job. I enjoyed having those fast individuals in there. I think they're definitely going to stay. At higher point levels, because most tournaments are about 2,300, so what can I bring in with another 305 points? The obvious thing, because I'm doing a fast list, is to just throw in the big flyer with a 5-point upgrade on it, Blade of Slashing or something. But I don't think it's optimal in the Abyssal Dwarfs. I don't think it's very good. What else could I bring in that would fit the theme and wouldn't weigh down the rest of the army? I could bring a Hellfane, because I've got a lot of the abominations in this list. So you could take the Hellfane upgrade that boosts the abominations. Let me actually open up... let's see. The Mantic app. because I've not had a close look at the Hellfane upgrade with Abominations to see what it actually does. I just know it exists. So, let's have a look. Opening up the Abyssal Dwarfs. And let's put a Hellfane. Okay, so here are the options for your Hellfane. You can upgrade it to get Wild Charge +2 infantry only. You can give it Aura Brutal Slave only, or Life Leech 1 Abomination only. So, now, Life Leech 1 isn't that amazing, but combined with all the regeneration they already have, that's not bad actually. So maybe a Hellfane with the Life Leech aura for Abominations, but the Hellfane doesn't gain Inspiring with that. So, yeah, I'm not sure about that then. So it's not the worst choice. It would give me a big Defense 6 piece in there. And it's not really slow, it's speed 6. So it's medium speed. So it doesn't slow down the army too much. It can just about keep up with the Abominations, particularly the Grotesques, and give them some life leech. So maybe bring in that Hellfane with the upgrade. That leaves me with some points though. So if I took that, how many points is that? The upgrade is 15. So the whole thing would be 280 points. So I'd still have 25 points left that I could use to get more expensive upgrade for one of the other units probably. So 2,300 points, would that be good? Possibly. It's something that synergizes with the units I've already got. And it gives me one thing that I'm lacking, which is a big Defense 6 thing. And it's not a golem, so it's not going to be really slow and get left behind all the time. And it gives me a teensy bit of shooting as well, which could be good for clearing chaff. Because in game 1, I think I felt the enemy shooting cleared off a bit of my chaff. I think it was in that game. And in this game 3 as well, the enemy shooting cleared off a bit of my chaff. So that could be good. So if you do get into just staring down the enemy and you need to clear something out with just those pistol shots, where you don't want to throw one of your individuals into them, that could be good. So any final comments for me to address before I close down this stream? Because we've covered just about everything here. Let's have... I'm just going to pull up my army photo, and then we can have a look at that again. And there we go. Turn off. Film strip. Hate that thing. Okay, so you can see, there we go, there's the army. I think it did a good job. Wargaming for fun. Enjoyed that, thanks. Well, thanks for viewing. Wargaming for fun. That is a name I have not seen on YouTube in quite some time. Unless someone else has come along and is just using the same name. Is this the original Wargaming for Fun? Leaving a comment here. So, happy with this list. I like the speed. I think, particularly in Game 2, it obviously did very well. It's very killy. Not only because the actual units, I've got more things that hit on 3s with the half-breeds. All the heroes are nice and killy as well. They've got a good number of attacks. They're super mobile. You can double them up, hit multiple of them into one unit at a time. The Grotesque champion, other than being a scoring unit, he doesn't bring that much to the table. Because to get him on a par with the half-breed champion, you have to get the Inspiring Talisman on him. So, I'm not sure about the Grotesque champion. He's really just there for the theme. So he's not a must-keep in the list. So I could potentially replace him with an Overmaster with the Wings of Honeymaze, which gives me another really dangerous flying individual. It gives me less scoring units, but if we're at a higher point level and I'm bringing in, let's say, the Hellfane, that balances that out a bit. So yeah, we've got some options going forward. Death by Dragons, what's next for you? Well, the next thing for me in general, let's have a look at my tournament calendar, which I've got over here. Next thing coming up tournament-wise is a Kings of War event on the 9th of December. So I'm keeping my eyes peeled for events before then, though, because obviously that's over a month away. And then the day after that, there's a Dead Zone event as well. Then at the end of December, we've got an Age of Sigmar tournament. Then my Dead Zone tournament, Code Orange 3, my third Dead Zone event, is at the start of January. And then after that, there's a huge gap. The only thing I'm signed up for after that into the next year is Clash of Kings 24. So I'm looking to fill in the gaps in the calendar with Kings of War, Dead Zone, Age of Sigmar, Dreadball, and anything else that's convenient for me to reach within striking distance of Nottingham. Any other game systems? What other game systems would I be open to playing at tournaments? Maybe Bolt Action? Looking over at my cabinet. That's probably the only one that's feasible. Yeah. Next, army-wise, for Kings of War, I've obviously got my ogres still, that I've got some of them assembled. They keep falling to the back of the line because I keep adding to the Night Stalkers and the Abyssal Dwarfs, though. And those are two such cool armies that I like so much that it's difficult to justify painting up the ogres in any kind of good time, because I'm always adding to my other game system armies as well, particularly Age of Sigmar with the old Stormcast Eternals, since they've got about 10,000 units to choose from, so I'm always adding to them. And yeah, those are the things that are next. What's next on the painting table? Well, I've got some Age of Sigmar stuff looking at me that's primed next to me. I might take a little break, a week or two, from painting because I had to go into beast mode on the old paint table this week to get these half-breeds, these grotesques done, and the bull. So when I submitted the list, I submitted all those units in it, knowing that I hadn't painted them yet. I think they were barely even base coated. I think the grotesques were base coated, the half-breeds weren't painted at all, and I gave myself a week to do them. So I thought that's going to be really good painting motivation. Submit them, so I've got 1 week to paint them. And I booked the Friday off work, and I was off work on the Wednesday as well. So that gave me time to get all of them done. And then I just finished them quite late on the Fridays when I finished the bull, which is this tiefling from Bad Squiddo. So really good motivation. If you want to paint things and you want to not get distracted, submit an army list with unpainted units in it. That is my red hot sizzling tip for the day. Okay, I think it's time to wrap this one up. So, good to see some activity in the chat. I think this is probably quite an optimal time to do a live stream on a Saturday evening. I think there's people out there in the internet land looking for this kind of juicy content straight after a tournament. And I do try to get them up on the same day as the event. And for 2 days, the videos are quite long as well. I've managed to stretch 3 games into 2 hours here, though. I think it was just very interesting playing this army with no defense 6 and no shooting and no spellcasting. So it was all about trying to maximise the speed advantages that I had and minimise the speed advantages that the enemy sometimes had, creating interesting angles, getting into good positions. And it was just a lot of fun. Maybe the most fun I've had with Abyssal Dwarfs playing for a while with this new list style. So I think I'm probably going to stick with this for at least another event and see how it does. And I've heard whispers that the half-breeds might be getting a boost in the new Clash of Kings book. That's the word going round on Facebook at the moment. So that would be nice since I've just painted up the second unit. Okay, thanks for watching everyone. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe. Don't forget to check out all the links in the description, including all of the social media shenanigans down there, including Twitter, Facebook, Discord server, and don't forget to pledge all your life savings to me, of course, on Patreon or through PayPal, because you want me to go to an endless stream of tournaments so that I can keep providing you with all this valuable tactical insight on how to beat me afterwards. So I think for providing that service, I'm entitled to at least your life savings pledged to me. I think we can agree on that. So, all that remains to be said is, good night out there, whatever you are.